Hello everybody, I'm back with another video. This one is further exploration of Ezekiel and what this book is really about and what the temple is and what it means. This is a hard lesson, and I think it's something that Yahuwah wants us to see for this time period we're in right now. Things are not what they seem, and they haven't been, and Jeremiah was right. We received a lot of lies. And sometimes it's like the more you know, or the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like the more I've studied, the more I realize how much I really just do not know. But I'm going to attempt to show you what I feel like Yahuwah showed me out of this book. And it's a hard lesson, but I think it's something that we all need to hear. When you read Ezekiel and you look at the temple, it's like, have you ever wondered why the features are unique to Ezekiel's temple that have never been in any of other of Yahuwah's temples before? Like, there's no wall of petition to exclude the heathens. There's no laver. There's no table of shewbread. There's no lampstand or menorah. There's no golden altar of incense. There's no veil. No Ark of the Covenant. And there are major changes to the altar. The sacrificial altar will be approached by a ramp from the east, where previous altars were all approached from the south. And now there's to be stairs to the altar, not a ramp. And the top of the altar is now described by the Hebrew word Ariel, meaning hearth of Elohim or line of Elohim. So there's a lot of changes in this temple compared to the other temples. And this is going to be significant later on, but it's something to consider. In Matthew 16:18, the Son of Man tells us, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it." Ezekiel's temple is also very different in many details from any previous temples that have existed in Israel. Therefore, most scripture scholars believe there will be one day exist a new temple that will be the millennial temple. What they have missed is the temple is already built. I'm going to show y'all that. And I hope you understand it when I do, because it's very complex. Something you might want to note when you're reading Ezekiel, and I'm just going to mention it here, is that the scrolls of Ezekiel are not in order in your scriptures. You can look and there's like in the such and such a month, you'll see these little sayings, and it'll tell you when the scroll that was being written at that time was done. And if you line them up, this is how they would line up. And actually, the first chapters 1 through 7 to verse 27, would be the last thing in these scrolls. Now, I just wanted to mention this because if you want to read them in order, this is how they would fall. So I just thought you might want to know that if you didn't already know it. Some people already know it. I borrowed this guy's little cartoon thing because I liked it. It kind of gives you a quick overview of what happens throughout Ezekiel. It's kind of like, when you look at it, it's divided up into sections. It's kind of like, what is Yahuwah's glory doing in Babylon, for one thing? When you'll notice that he's talking to him in Babylon. And chapters 1 through 11 are all accusations against Israel. And he's telling them to accuse them and tell them and judge them. And he gives them all kinds of instructions on what to tell them. And another thing you want to notice about this book is who is talking to who. You do not hear Yahuwah address Ezekiel, not through the whole book. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the Son of Man. And he says it over and over, Son of Man, Son of Man. And when something is said over and over and over, then you need to take note of it. I believe, and I think this has been overlooked, that Ezekiel is not the name of the person in the book. I think Ezekiel describes the character of the person. Ezekiel means Yahuwah strengthens. But the person being addressed is the Son of Man. And this Son of Man, when you look at this book, is the same Son of Man that came in the New Testament. And what this all is Yahuwah showing, telling what will happen. And then he is instructing him on what he is to do. So it's like a inside look into what the Father told the Son so that we can know what would happen. And this is one reason I think that it's kind of odd that the Judeans did not realize who he was. Because if they had studied this book, they should have seen it unfolding right in front of their eyes. Okay? He goes through these weird acts with him in some of the chapters where he's telling him specific things to do. And these are significant into what he actually did when he came. And he tells them to go, and he specifically told them, just like he does he said, I only came for the lost house of Israel. And he tells them to go to the house of Israel and speak my words to them. And he says, but they're not going to listen to you because they're rebellious. And then chapter 8 through 11 is a temple vision where he shows him the temple. And then chapters 12 through 24 are judgment on Israel. And he tells him to use parables, which we know that everything that the Son of Man spoke in the New Testament, it was done in parables. Then chapter 25 through 32 is the judgment on all the nations. And then when you get to 33 is when Jerusalem falls. And then 34 through 37, it gives some hope for Israel. And then 38 and 39, the hope for the nations. And then 40 through 48 is hope for all creation. But there's a lot of judgment in all this too. It's like, this is the way people usually lay this book out. But there's a lot more there than what they've been seeing. And I hope I can show this to you, because this has been the hardest video I think I've ever done, because I see things, but explaining it to somebody else is difficult. And I think that this is, being the end time, is when we're supposed to understand these things. And that's why they're coming to light. And they haven't before. It's not that anybody has not tried hard or not studied them, but Father has had everybody's ears turned off and their eyes turned off so they couldn't see or hear it. But now it's time for the end. It's like it's time to hear it. So I hope I do a good job of this, and I hope it honors Yahuwah, because this has been a very difficult book, but a very eye-opening book once you understand it. We'll talk about looking deep into Ezekiel. It's like even the first 3 verses of the beginning of Ezekiel say so much more than what's on the surface when you look at them in Hebrew. Like, you learn that the Son of Man was 30 in this prophecy, when Yahuwah tells and shows them what will happen. The first part of Ezekiel pretty much tells us these interesting things. First off, Ezekiel means Yahuwah strengthens, and Buzi means sprung from my contempt. Jehoiachin means Yahuwah establishes. The meaning of the name Chaldean, according to Alfred Jones' Dictionary of Old Testament Proper Names, reads, as it were demons. So if we looked at the meaning of the words and we looked deeper into the first 3 verses, this is kind of what you would hear. And it came to be in the 13th year, when I was 30 years old, in the 4th month, on the 5th of the new moon, as I was among the exiles on the joined rivers, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of Elohim. On the 5th of the new moon, in the 5th year of the sovereign Jehoiachin's, which is the exiles established by Yahuwah, the word of Yahuwah came expressly to the one that Yahuwah had strengthened, the priest, the son that sprung from my contempt, in the land of the Kasdim, the demons, by the river Chabal, the joined rivers, and the hand of Yahuwah came upon him there. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So, there's a lot more there, just in 3 verses, than what we normally hear. I just wanted to let y'all know that, because I try to go deep down into these verses so that I get a better meaning of what is being said, because I did not grow up speaking Hebrew, and I can read some of it, but I'm not very good at pronouncing it, and that's why you don't hear me say a lot of these words in Hebrew, and use them a lot like that. I'll use them in English, and a lot of people are like, well, why do you use the English Standard Version Bible all the time? I do that because that's what I grew up speaking, and you use the language that you know real well, you understand better what's being said. But you have to remember, you're going to lose some things, so you still got to look at the others that you didn't grow up using. I hope that makes sense. But I just wanted to show y'all that within 3 verses, this is how much stuff is missed. So, where was the Son of Man when Yahuwah was talking to him? Where is the Chabar River? Chabar means joining together. So he's talking about a place where everything is joined together. Now, history records that some of the Chaldeans were driven northward out of the Near East by the Assyrians and the Medes prior to 610 BC. From the shores of the Black Sea, they turned to the southeastern Europe, then after a time headed west into the Roman Empire. They settled in northern Italy, southeastern France, and part of Spain and northern Africa. And he tells us in Ezekiel 1:3, the word of Yahuwah came to Ezekiel, the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the Chabar Canal. Well, interesting enough, when I went to look at the geography and started looking for this word Chabar, I found that there were bars, like as in places people go drink, on this place in Rome called the river Tiber. And I believe this is where this vision occurs, is in the river Tiber. Now, this is contrary to everything that all the other scripture scholars will teach, but when you look at the Tiber Creek in Washington, D.C., the River Thames in London, and then the River Tiber in Rome, look at the similarities. I think he was trying to tell us that he's talking about a joined group. And later on in Ezekiel, it talks about the mothers and the daughters and the sisters. This is them. They are joined. They're joined in what they believe and how they worship and everything. These 3. So I think he was trying to give us a hidden message with this word. And this is what I'm talking about going deep, is like to see things that you don't see on the surface. But just because of history, geography, and the wording. I believe he was trying to tell us that it's these three groups of people, that it was more than one group of people he was talking about. Micah 7:10 through 12, plus a lot of the other prophets, tell us that the boundary of Jerusalem has increased. Then my enemy will see, and the shame will cover her who said to me, Where is Yahuwah your Elohim? And my eyes will look upon her. Now she will be trampled down like the mire of the streets. A day for the building of your walls. In that day the boundary shall be far extended. In that day they will come to you from Assyria and from the cities of Egypt, and from Egypt to the river, and from the sea to sea, and from mountain to mountain. Where the New Jerusalem is going to be much larger than what it is today. And you have to take that in consideration when you look at this. And that's why I think that he could have been all the way up there in Rome, Italy. Scripture scholars have said that New Jerusalem is going to be about 1,380 miles by 1,380 miles. So the U.S. is about 2,680 miles by 1,582 miles. So New Jerusalem could very well overlap a huge portion of Europe. So it's going to be about probably 2/3 the size of the U.S. So you can see for this little overlay map that I found how huge it actually could be. Okay, I'm going to do to y'all what I usually do. I start in one book and go to another one. But I thought this was significant, and I think that it plays right into what Ezekiel is happening in Ezekiel. So I want to mention it at the beginning so that you kind of have this idea in your head about the holy people. It's Daniel 12, verse 5 through 13. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled? The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, It will be for a time, times, and a half a time. When the power of the holy people has finally broken, all these things will be completed. I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, My Lord, what will the outcome of all this be? He replied, Go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless, refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. What I want you to note out of this is what I highlighted. When the power of the holy people has finally broken, all these things will be completed. These holy people, who are they? They are the ones that are worshiping today. That's what he's talking about. So just keep that in your mind as we look at this. What I'm going to show you is Ezekiel's temple is already built. Now, it's the Vatican. And don't just turn the video off and say, oh, she's crazy. No, it's the Vatican. You'll have to watch it all the way to the end because I'm going to prove it out. But this is what Ezekiel's temple is. People don't realize it, but it's connected to the Jewish faith. It was started by Peter and Paul. Everybody thinks it's a copy of King Solomon's temple, but it's not. It's actually the end-time temple. strange as it is, everything I've studied over my entire life, art history and everything, I had to study the Vatican in depth when I was in college. It was a part of the courses, and it's like, when I was reading this, it just dawned on me that that is it. And it's the descriptions is why, and they are so in-depth in this book. But I'm going to show you how and why it is this particular place. And it's complicated, and I hope I do a good job of it. Ezekiel 6, verses 1 through 7, give us a good idea of where we're talking about and who we're talking about. And it's like I said again, it's the descriptions that give us the hints. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward the mountains of Israel, and prophesy against them. And you shall say, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of Master Yahuwah. Thus says Master Yahuwah to the mountains, to the hills, to the ravines, and to the valleys, Look, I myself am bringing a sword against you, and I shall destroy your high places. Your slaughter places shall be ruined. Your sun pillars shall be broken to pieces. And I will make your slain fall in front of your idols, and lay the corpses of the children of Israel in front of their idols, and scatter their bones all around your slaughter places. In all your dwelling places the cities shall be destroyed, and the high places deserted, so that your slaughter places are broken and bear their punishment. Your idols shall be smashed and made to cease, and your sun pillars cut down, and your works blotted out, and the slain shall fall in the midst, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah. Well, where do we see the sun pillars today? We see the sun pillars at all the churches, and Catholic and Protestant. They are these long, phallic-looking symbols, and they go way back to paganism. Where do we see the idols? We see them in the Catholic Church, and we see them in the Protestant churches. They're your crosses, your statues, your little fishies, your little birds, all these things that Exodus 20 tells us we weren't supposed to do. Every one of them has been being done. And this gives us a clue as to who in the end times we're talking about. So the slaughter places are the churches. And many people are not going to see this, because they think of these buildings as being their sanctuaries to Yahuwah. It's going to be a difficult lesson for people to see. But, you know, it's like the deception is so deep. But I will prove all this out. Okay, Ezekiel 8. And it came to be in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th of the new moon, as I sat in my house with the elders of Judea, sitting before me, that the hand of the Master Yahuwah fell upon me there. And I looked, and I saw a likeness, like the likeness of fire. And from his waist and downward is the appearance of fire, and from his waist and upward the appearance of brightness, like the glowing metal. And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my head. And the Ruach lifted me between the earth and the heavens, and brought me in the visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looks toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy. And see, the esteem of Elohim of Israel was there, like the vision I saw in the plain. Okay, where I believe that he lifted him and took him was to this north gate up there in the Vatican. Because if you were in that north gate area, what you would see would be Peter's chair, because that is the main focal point of the inner court of St. Peter's Basilica. Now, he would have been standing right there in that opening. And what he would have saw would be in where that star is. I put a star where he would have been standing. And what he would see right there in the front would be this. And also another clue to this is it says, like the vision that I saw in the plain. And I'm going to cover that vision that he saw in the plain. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But this sculpture piece is what he was seeing in that vision. And this is complicated, so stay with me and just keep looking at what I'm showing you. But a good thing to do right now, before we go any further, would be to pause the video and read chapter 8 in its entirety to get an overview. Because it's hard for me to break all this down and give it to you where it makes sense, but I'm going to try. This is to give you a better overview of where he was. Okay, he would have been right up there close to that where that chair sculpture piece is. Okay, and this is what he was describing. Now, Ezekiel 8:16. And he brought me to the inner court of the house of Yahuwah, and there at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the slaughter place, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of Yahuwah, and their faces toward the east, it says. But when you look at that word in Strong's Kadim, which is Hebrew, it means front. So they were facing front, which matches what they do in the Vatican. And they were bowing themselves toward the frontward, toward this sun image, that round-looking thing with the dove in the middle. But you can see the vastness of what he was looking at, and you can see all the idols that were in there, and this is the inner court. Okay, verses 5 and 6 say that he saw the image of jealousy in the entrance. So what was he looking at? What is right in the entrance to the Vatican? The statue of Peter. And it also says to lift up your eyes to the north. Well, if you look at a map, north of Israel would be Europe. So it could have been any place north of Israel. But I believe this is the actual place that he was looking at. The prophets also echoed this north direction. And even Daniel, when he talks about, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, but the king of the north shall rush him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and many ships, and he shall come into the countries, and shall overflow and pass through. Jeremiah 1:13, and the word of Yahuwah came to me a second time, saying, what do you see? And I said, I see a boiling pot facing away from the north. Jeremiah in the verse 14. And Yahuwah said to me, out of the north the evil will break forth on all the inhabitants of the land. And Jeremiah 4:6, lift up the standard toward Zion, seek refuge and do not stand still, for I am bringing evil from the north and a great destruction. Isaiah 14:13, you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of Elohim. I will set my throne on high, and I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the far reaches of the north. So I think this is the direction and the right place. Verse 9, and he said to me, go in and see the evil abominations which they are doing there. And I went in and looked, and I saw all kinds of creeping creatures, the abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel, carved all around the wall. And facing them stood 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel, with their in the midst stood with Jezaniah the son of Zaphan, each one had a censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense was going up. And this is what they do. They walk around with these censers and they swing them, and incense goes all over the place. And when you look around the room, you're going to see all these abominations, dragons, demon-looking things. It's really creepy. You have lifted up the shrine of your king, the pedestal of your idols, and the star of your God, which you made for yourselves. That's Amos 5:26. Pretty much describes it. And he said to me, go in and see the evil abominations they're doing there. And I went in and looked and saw all these creeping creatures, abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel carved all around the walls. And you can see that there is the six-sided star. And they even wear it on their mitre hats. This is the idols of Israel, from the house of Israel. One of the abominations. This just shows you really how bad it is. This is the tomb of Pope Clement the 13th. It's at St. Peter's Basilica, and it was done by Antonio Cananova, who constructed it in about 1783. The Pope is pictured kneeling down, and on the right-hand side is the angel of death. The figure on the left-hand side represents religion, dressed in Israelite clothes. On the belt and the headband in Hebrew text is Yahuwah's name. So on these abominations, they even have his name, and it's just really creepy. And they've got all these, most of the popes, their bones are in tombs inside of St. Peter's, actually in the building. And this is the Gothic style Trivulzio chandelier. It was early 13th century work of art by an Anglo-Norman master, and it's shaped in a menorah. It actually is a menorah. And what it was supposed to symbolize was a passage from the Old Covenant with the Judeans to the New Covenant with the Christian Church. So they actually are like taking the place of. It's replacement theology. And this other object is a gilded glass, and it depicts the Judean symbolism and ritual objects from the 4th century. And the point I'm making here is all the stuff from Israel, which was south of here, went north of here with Peter and Paul. And they basically were replacing what was down there with this church up north. What they did in reality versus what you think they did. They replaced the Son of Man with the horned god of the underworld, or the serpent in the garden. This face is on the wall below the list of popes that are buried at St. Peter's Basilica. When you look at this face, what you're looking at is the serpent from the garden, or the horned god of the underworld. Right here on the right, this is a modern Wicca picture of what they call the Green Man, or the horned god of the underworld. He's called many different names: Kernunos, the sun god. They call him all kinds of things, but they don't hide this. But because the general public does not know what they're looking at, they don't even see it. But I mean, this purely looks evil when you look at it. And you can see the snakes form the horns at the top, and he's always depicted as part of trees, like with leaves and stuff. And this is what he was talking about, the evil abominations, because it is full of evil. I mean, just totally full of it. But they took the Son of Man and twisted everything. What they did was they went off to Rome and they created something, another total deity, but tried to say it was the same thing. And now they have the whole world worshiping this deity that is actually a pagan deity. It's actually the serpent from the garden. Here's another close-up of some more of the abominations. And you'll notice that you'll see dragons, and you see all these bizarre faces and stuff in all this. And every little thing has significant meaning. It's pretty creepy if you go study pagan symbolism, you can see a lot of things in this that you don't see. But I just want to show you some of the close-up so you can see that standing in this temple you would be bombarded with visuals of abominations. I believe Peter and them carted off a lot of the relics too. And one of the reasons I believe this is I see something that a lot of people don't see. It's like these popes and stuff are wearing the ephods. And we see the thing about the ephods in Exodus 28:12. And you shall set 2 stones in the shoulder piece of the ephod as stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel. And Exodus 28:15, you shall make a breastpiece of judgment in skilled work in the style of an ephod. You shall make it of gold and blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. You shall make it. But I believe some of these things they're wearing when they're doing these ceremonies and stuff are the actual old relics. I don't think they're new ones. Some more older pictures of them wearing them. So this was probably carted off from the temple, and these are probably really actually old relics. To be honest, they're not new remakes. This evil shines through in everything there. Um, I hate to show y'all so many evil pictures, but that's the only way you're going to see this. Um, the Roman altars for the saints with the relics, those relics contained in those little containers on those things are actually bones and hair stuff, any kind of memorabilia from their actual bodies, which is gross. But if you'll notice, they all have these symbols, these 2 fingers pointing up. This is a pagan thing. This deals with the adversary saying, hey, my world below is just as good as Father's above. And it comes from the emerald tablets. And the emerald tablets were found actually in the pyramids. But strangely enough, they're written in ancient Hebrew. And I think it was the adversary's attempt to have his own set of stones like Father gave the 10 Commandments. But what he's saying is my world's just the same as Father's up above, and it's not. But these symbols are all over the place in there. They're on the paintings, they're on the statues. They all have these 2 fingers pointing up. And you'll notice in that one, the second one from the right, you'll see the all-seeing eye down there in the bottom of them too. If you look real closely at them, there's even more symbols in them than just the 2 fingers. And it's important that you know all this is there, because that's the abominations that I feel like he was seeing. Ezekiel 8:10, and I went in and I looked and I saw all kinds of creeping creatures, abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel carved all around the walls. This, what you're looking at right here, the one in the circle is on the wall. This is the seal of the Vatican. And you notice all the dragons and the abominations that are all over it. And then this one is in the center of the floor. But I just thought I'd show you this one too. Ezekiel 8:14 says, "And then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of Yahuwah. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, Have you seen this, O son of man? You will see even greater abominations than these." Okay, when you look at this little map here, what is at the north gate of the St. Peter's Basilica? It's the Sistine Chapel. The main focus of the Sistine Chapel is the Pietà, which is the statue of Mary holding Christ. And all the women kneel and pray in front of it. And they call Mary the Queen of Heaven. And Tammuz was the Queen of Heaven in the Old Testament. So I believe this is what he was seeing. In Ezekiel 8:12, Yahuwah describes the Vatican residence rooms and what they're doing in them. This is what it says. "And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the dark, each one in the room of his idols? For they say Yahuwah does not see us. Yahuwah has forsaken the land." Now, I think that this has to do more also not just with the idols that they have in their private homes, but also with some of the lewd behavior and stuff that we're seeing today. But I wanted to share this part because I think it describes the insides of their residencies. This one, then the picture is a private, like, apartment at the Vatican for one of the priests. Ezekiel 8:17 through 18. "And he said to me, Have you seen, O son of man? It is a small matter to the house of Judah, and to the abominations which they have done here. For they have filled the land with violence, and turned back to provoke me. And see, they are putting the branch to my nose. Therefore I shall indeed deal in wrath. My eyes shall not pardon nor spare, and they shall cry in my ears with a loud voice, but I shall not hear them." So they fill the land with violence. How they've done this is politically. Every major political leader from every country, no matter what they believe in, makes their trips to the Vatican and has to seek the Pope's approval for some reason. Even our president. They control everything. People do not see it and they don't know what's going on behind the scene, but they are still in control. Ezekiel chapter 9. "And he called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, Let the punishers of the city draw near, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand." And that weapon, when you look at the Hebrew word, can be like a vessel or an implement. "And look, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a battle axe in his hand. And one man in their midst was clothed with linen, and had a writer's inkhorn at his side. And they came in and stood beside the bronze slaughter place. The esteem of Elohim of Israel went up from the cherub, where it had been, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. And Yahuwah said to him, Pass on into the midst of the city, into the midst of Jerusalem, and you shall put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within. And to the others he said in my hearing, Pass on into the city after him and strike. Do not let your eye pardon nor spare. Kill to destruction old, young men, maidens, children, and women, but do not come near any one upon whom is the mark, and begin at my set-apart place. So they began with the elders who were in the front of the house. And he said to them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain, go out. And they went out and struck in the city. And as they were striking them, it came to be that I alone was left. I fell on my face and cried out and said, Ah, Master Yahuwah, are you destroying all the remnant of Israel in pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? And he said to me, The crookedness of the house of Israel and Judea is exceedingly great, and the land is filled with bloodshed, and the city filled with that which is warped. They say, Yahuwah has forsaken the land, and Yahuwah is not seeing. But as for me, my eye shall not pardon, nor I spare. I shall recompense their deeds on their own head. And see, the man clothed with linen, who had the inkhorn at his side, reported back and said, I have done as you commanded me. And you'll see in Isaiah 66:17, he says, Those who set themselves apart and cleanse themselves at the gardens, after one in their midst eating pig, and the abomination and the mouse are snatched away together, declares Yahuwah. The one in the midst with the writing case brings the destruction. And I believe that was Paul, because he's always shown with the writing implements. So that's my take on that part. I may be wrong, but that's my take on it. Chapter 10. And we're getting an overview here. I decided to go ahead and just read these chapters because I want you to have a good overview of what's going on. And I looked and saw the expanse that was above the head of the cherub, like a sapphire stone, having the appearance and likeness of a throne. And he spoke to the man clothed with linen, and said, Go in among the wheels under the cherub, and fill your hands with coals of fire from among the cherub, and scatter over the city. And he went in before my eyes, and the cherub was standing on the south side of the house when the man went in, and the cloud filled the inner court, and the esteem of Yahuwah went up from the cherub over the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with a cloud, and the court was filled with brightness of the esteem of Yahuwah. And the sound of the wings of the cherub was heard in the outer court, like the voice of El Shaddai when he speaks. And it came to be, when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, Take fire from among the wheels, from among the cherubim, that he went in and stood beside the wheel. And the cherubim stretched out a hand from among the cherubim, to the fire that was among the cherubim, and took some, and put it in the hands of the man clothed with linen, who took it and went out. And the form of the man's hand was seen under the wings of the cherubim. I looked, and I saw 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherubim, and the wheel's appearance was like the color of beryl stone. As for the appearance of all 4 looked alike, as if the wheel in the middle of the wheel. When they went in all 4 sides. They did not turn aside when they went, but went in the direction of the head was facing. And they did not turn aside when they went. And their entire bodies, and their backs, and their hands, and their wings, and the wheels that the 4 had, were covered with eyes all around. The wheels were called in my hearing wheel. Each one had 4 faces, and the first face was the face of a cherub, the second face the face of a man, the third face the face of a lion, and the fourth face the face of an eagle. And the cherub were lifted up. It was the living creatures I saw by the river Chebar. And when the cherub went, the wheels went beside them. And when the cherub lifted their wings to mount up the earth, the same wheels also did not turn from beside them. And when they stood still, the wheels stood still. And when they were lifted up, the others were lifted up. And the spirit of the living creatures was in them. And the esteem of Yahuwah went from the threshold of the house, and stood over the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings, and rose from the earth before my eyes. When they went out, the wheels were beside them. And it stood at the door of the east gate of the house of Yahuwah. And the esteem of Elohim of Israel was above them. It was the living creatures I saw under Elohim of Israel by the river Chabal. I knew they were cherubim. Each one had 4 faces, and each one had 4 wings, and the likeness of hands of a man was under their wings, and the likeness of their face was the same as the faces which I had seen on the river Chabal, their appearances and themselves. Each one went straight forward. This is probably going to be the hardest thing I've ever tried to explain to people. But Ezekiel 10:1 tells us, "And I looked, and I saw an expanse that was above the head of the cherubim, like a sapphire stone, having the appearance and likeness of a throne." So you've got the sapphire-looking stone and the throne, and then you've got your 4 creatures down below. Okay, what this is Giano Lorenzo Bernini's Katrina Petri, which is the chair of St. Peter. It's a bronze and wood and stained glass sculpture piece that's at the St. Peter's Basilica in the very front. It's the centerpiece of the whole temple. Okay, and it's considered the actual wooden chair is supposed to be inside of this chair, which is encased in bronze and gold, and that it was Peter's chair that he sat in. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I do know that Revelation tells us that for Elohim had put in their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of Elohim are fulfilled. And I believe that is speaking about the apostles. They handing over their royal power to the beast. Okay, this definitely is described here, and I'm going to show you in further detail. Okay, in verse 21 it says, "In their going these went, and their standing still they stood still, and in their being lifted up from earth the wheels were lifted up along with them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels." So the power was in these wheels, and the living creatures is like, it's a strange word. It means alive, hence raw, fresh, strong, and it can be either literal or figurative, as like figuratively alive, not really alive. And that's what I think it means. Okay, and the wheels, now it says that the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. This word for wheel in Strong's is ophan, and it means to revolve a wheel, and it specifically encompasses a threshing wand or a wheel. So it's a specific type of wheel. It's for threshing, like the threshing floor. And if you notice, the chair even looks like a wheel almost, like it's being held and spun around or something. I don't know. It's really strange. And I looked and saw an expanse that above the cherubim, like a sapphire stone, having the appearance and likeness of a throne. And that emblem with the dove in the middle is almost like exactly like a sapphire stone. I mean, it is the pure mirror image of one. And then verse 9, "And I looked, and I saw 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel besides each cherubim, and the wheels. The appearance was like the color of a beryl stone. As for the appearance of all 4 looked alike, as if a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went with their 4 sides. They did not turn aside when they went, and they went in the direction the head was facing. They did not turn aside when they went, and their entire bodies, and their backs, and their hands, and their wings, and the wheels and the forehead were covered with eyes all around, and the wheels were called in my hearing wheel, and each one had 4 faces. First face was the face of a cherub, and the second face the face of a man, the third face the face of a lion, and the fourth face the face of an eagle. Okay. And this theme of the wheel comes around again in Proverbs 20:21 through 26. An inheritance obtained with greed at the beginning is not blessed at the end. Do not say, I repay evil. Wait for Yahuwah, and he saves. Differing weights are an abomination to Yahuwah, and a false scale is not good. The steps of a man are from Yahuwah. What does a man know about his own way? It is a snare for a man to say rashly, it is set apart, and only later to reconsider his vows. A wise sovereign willows out the wrong and turns the wheel over them. Now, the 4 little cherubs, I believe, are these 4 apostles at the bottom. And it says they were the color of beryl stone. When you look at their faces and all, they are the color of beryl stone. And Exodus 25:20 mirrors this too, and I think it's prophetic of this temple. The cherubs shall spread out their wings above the overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, and their faces one to another toward the mercy seat shall face the cherubim be. And at the top of this seat of Peter, there's 2 cherubim facing each other. I think the Ark of the Testimony is a testimony of what happens in the future, thus it being a testimony. And this is the beryl stone, and this is a close-up of the faces. And you couldn't get any closer to the color of beryl stone. Okay. And he mirrors this back in the chapter. I should have put that verse in here, but he mirrors it back to what he saw by the Chabal Canal. Okay, and this is where he describes the feet. Was in chapter 1 when he was on the Chabal Canal, and it says, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished bronze. Exactly, they looked like calf's feet sticking out. What he is describing is these 4 men that at the base of that sculpture are the ones that of the 4 Gospels, and they are shown over and over and over with the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. And they, on the front of all the scripture Bibles that the Catholic Church uses, it's very interesting. This one is from the one of the Gospels manuscripts, the Codex Carolingian miniature portraying the evangelist and their symbols, and these became the symbols for the evangelist. The visual fronting for the 4 Gospels is a tetramorph, and a tetramorph is a symbolic arrangement of 4 differing elements, or the combination of 4 disparate elements in one unit. The term is derived from the Greek word tetra, which means 4, and morph, which means shape. Archaeological evidence exists showing that the early man divided the 4 quarters of the horizon or space, and later a place of sacrifice such as a temple, and attributed characteristics and spiritual qualities to each quarter. Alternately, the composite elements were carved into mythical creatures such as in ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Babylonian sphinxes of iniquity, depicting bull-like bodies and bird wings and lion's paws and human faces. Such composite creatures are found in many mythologies. In the Christian art, the tetramorph is a union of symbols from the 4 evangelists, derived from the 4 living creatures in the book of Ezekiel, into a single figure, or more commonly a group of four figures. Each of the four evangelists is associated with one of the living creatures, usually shown with their wings. The most common association, but not the original or only, is that Matthew is the man, Mark is the lion, Luke is the ox, and John is the eagle. In Christian art and iconography, evangelists' portraits are often accompanied by these tetramorphs, or symbols alone used to represent them. Evangelist portraits that depict them in their human form are often accompanied with the symbolic creature and then Christ in the middle also, surrounded by these four. And one thing that's interesting to note about this is we have these gospels labeled with the four evangelists, but there are arguments back and forth, and we don't have any evidence of who actually wrote them until the 4th century when Eusebius gives us a history. So it's very, very interesting. And it's very interesting that they chose these four and that they chose to put the creatures from Ezekiel into each one, like to take one of the four creatures for each of the evangelists. There's a reason for that. And this is Yahuwah's divine providence. I mean, he did this. And that's what those four creatures, living creatures, symbolize, is those gospels going out into the world. That's why they move so peculiarly. When you read the description of how they've got the wheels, the spirit in each one, and wherever that one goes, they face forward and they go, and the wheels go with them and all this stuff. I mean, we've gone over that scripture, but it's like, when you read that description, it's like it perfectly fits a book going out, or a word. And this was a way to connect that so we would know. I hope that makes sense to y'all, but it's very, very unusual, and I don't know how I made this connection except for Yahuwah showing me, because I would have never figured it out. I mean, but that's what these are. In Luke 3:17, we're told his winnowing fork is in his hand to clear the threshing floor and to gather the wheat into the barn, but the chaff he will burn in an unquenchable fire. Okay, now let's look at Ezekiel 1:11 through 15. Their faces and the corners of their prayer garments are stretched overhead. 2 of each one joined each man. 2 clothed their bodies. They walked each one straight forward, which there the Spirit came to pass, to walk where they went. They did not turn about where they walked. The likeness of the living creatures appeared as kindled embers of fire, the appearance of a torch. The Spirit went to and fro, or walked between the living creatures. The fire was bright, and from out of the fire sprang gleaming lightnings. The creatures ran and returned, delighted in restoring and repenting. As the appearance of the gleaming lightning, I saw the living creatures, and look, a united threshing wheel in the land joined the living creatures, each with 4 faces. The faces of the living creatures are as characters of men that carried the word of the living Elohim to the nations. The corners of the talents are, through prayer, complete their work of Yahuwah's judgment on the threshing floor of life, initiated by the decision of Adam. So what exactly is happening here is the judgment is carried out with these words coming from the Son of Man. And this word was given to him by Yahuwah. So it's Yahuwah's words given by the Son of Man, carried out through the 4 Gospels. That's what the wheels are. You might say, wait a minute, he's talking about wings. Okay, well, when you look at the word for wings, it's kephah. And kephah actually means, it can be a wing, a garment, a corner of a shirt, um, a flap, any kind of a wrap, a mantle. And specifically, I think it ties into the tzitzits that you wear. You know how the woman touched his fringes and she was healed? You know, I think that the wings have to do with these garments that the figures are wearing in the sculpture. And they also have the long things with the little fringes on the bottom too. Because when you look at the Hebrew Chaldean lexicon, it says that it can be an edge extremity of a garment, the skirt, or the skirts of a mantle. So it's dealing with garments as well as it could be wings. But I think that it was probably would have been better translated as garments, because I think we kind of missed some of the meaning by thinking that they were flying wings. This is how we know that the living creatures are men. Um, in Revelation, this is also seen. The living creatures are also seen in Revelation 4:7. The first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. Okay, Genesis 2:7. Then Yahuwah Elohim formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. So that's how we know that living creatures are men in this analogy. So, by the description of Ezekiel, these living creatures were messengers, because the cherub can also be a messenger, that looked like men except they had four faces. The hand of power of a man describes these living creatures as men. They were wearing Jewish prayer garments that covered them, just like these statues. Their power came through their witness, their prayer covering from Yahuwah, and their prayer. These living creatures are messengers of Elohim. Today, religion and religious imagery put wings on all kinds of angelic creatures, originally adapted from the religions of Babylon and Samaria. These living creatures do not have wings for flying. To say that is to do an assumption, and the actual Hebrew indicates this totally different thing. And I went over the prayer garments and stuff with you already, but I just wanted to show this close-up picture here because you can see it better, and you can one of them you could actually see the fringes on it. I don't know if it was this one. No, yeah, it is this one. Down on the edges there's the little fringy things, but that's what they're talking about, is the prayer fringes. And these are living creatures, are men. In Zechariah, we have the prophecy in 8:23. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, in the days 10 men from all languages of the nations take hold, yes, they shall take hold of the edge of the garment of a man, a Judean, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. So he's talking about the fringes. And then in Revelation 4:7, we have these tetramorphs mentioned again. It says the first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the wings or the corners of the prayer garment, like I said, the sits. I have such a hard time with that word. They're mentioned in that 8:23. And then they're also referred to in 1 Samuel 15:27 when Saul caught hold of the hem of Samuel's robe and tore it. The talent is mentioned in as a cloak in 2 Kings 2:13, when Elisha picked up the mantle that had fallen from Elijah when he was taken up to heaven in the whirlwind. This same understanding of the talent is required in Luke 8:41 regarding that woman I told you with the issue of the bleeding. She touched the cloak of Yahushua and was immediately healed. In Psalm 17:8 shows Yahuwah wearing a talent as he tends after the needs of the people. And in Revelation 19:16, Yahushua wore a robe or a talent, and on his thigh is written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. The four living creatures of Yahuwah's are a part of the spiritual threshing machine that operate in the vision of Ezekiel, are also explained in detail in the book of Revelation. I just read that to you, Revelation 4:7. And the 24 elders wear these talents in white. Most of the images that you see handed down throughout Christianity that portray these scriptures have been wrongly interpreted because they don't contain any Jewish understanding. So what you see are mostly elements of confusion and conjecture. And I think that's one reason this has not been seen. But of course it's a part of Yahuwah's plan, because he said blind them, make them blind, make them drunk, so they don't know. And it's sealed into the end. That's in Isaiah. So we weren't supposed to see it until now, but now we're seeing it. And we see more about the kafah in Malachi 4:1-6. For look, the day shall come, burning like a furnace, and all the proud and every wrongdoer shall be stubble, and the day that shall come shall burn them up, says Yahuwah of hosts, which leaves to them neither root nor branch. But to you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings, or kafah. And you shall go out and leap for joy like calves from the stall, and you shall trample the wrongdoers, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day that I do this, says Yahuwah of hosts. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him on Horeb, for all Israel, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with utter destruction. And this is real interesting because he's talking about the corners of the garment again as the wings. He'll come with the righteousness. He comes with the corners of the garment, which means he comes with the 10 Commandments. An interesting thing I added in here, just as a side note, that Matthew 17:12, the Son of Man tells us, But I say to you, behold, Elijah has come, and they did not know him, but did to him whatever they desired. So also the Son of Man is about to suffer by them. So he's letting them know that Elijah has come. Okay, now I want to show you an overview of a description. Looking at this altar at the front of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Okay, Ezekiel 1:22-28. And this is like a direct translation. The likeness of the expanse over the heads of the living creatures appeared as a dreadful crystal spread out over their heads above. Okay, up over their heads of the four living creatures was a crystal, and there is a crystal looking thing. And below the expanse, the corners of their garments were straight, one towards the other. Okay, you've got all these garments, and they are kind of winging toward each other. And let's see, everyone had 2 corners hidden on the side of their bodies. So there's corners on the sides of their bodies, and as they walked, I discerned them, the voice of their wings the sound of praise, and the sound of many waters, the voice of the Almighty, the sound of tumult, as the voice of an army. This would be all the words going out from them. Water is usually words in prophecy, and this is all the words that go out from them, like an army. They stood and let down the wings of their garments. That is a very significant statement, because the tzitzits stand are what you, in the Old Testament, they are for you to remember your 10 Commandments by. Everybody's supposed to wear them on the 4 corners of their shirts. And this is to remind you of the 10 Commandments. So if they let them down, that means they let down the 10 Commandments. There came to pass a voice out of the expanse that was over their heads, as they stood with their wings down. Again, he's talking about their wings being down of their garments. From out of the top of the expanse was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, with the countenance of a sapphire stone. And you see the throne, St. Peter's chair, and encased in that chair is the old chair according to the Vatican. I don't know, but it's supposed to be inside of that one. It's like they built this new version over on top of it, and they've still got his original chair. And you might note right above that chair there's a little menorah too. I don't know if you can see it real good in this smaller picture, but there's a tiny menorah, and then the big beehive headdress. Let's see, where were we? Was the likeness of the throne. We did that. Over the likeness of the throne was the appearance of a man out of the top of the expanse. There's a little man at the very top. I saw a fountain of polished brass, and that's exactly what it looks like. It's like a big old fountain of polished brass, as the appearance of fire encompassing the house of Elohim from out of the beautiful countenance of the loins beneath, and from out of the countenance of the loins downward. And you can see it does kind of go, it like expands into the room, and it goes down and it goes up. I saw the appearance of a fire shining in a circle, and you kind of got that with the seat of the chair. I keep losing my place, I'm sorry. And let's see, out of the beautiful countenance, okay, go with that. Appearance of shooting light, which comes to pass in the thundercloud on a rainy day, as the appearance of brightness round about. And you can see that this sculpture piece even has the rays of the light coming out of the billows of smoke that makes it look like clouds with the rays of light shining through them, just like he's describing. I believe this is what he was describing. This letting down of the wings of the garments is very significant, because what he's talking about is the law. It's like, and we see in Luke 16:17, the Son of Man told us, but it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one stroke of the law to become void. So that's how hard it is for the law not to be there. It would be easier for all of heaven and earth to pass away. That's a big statement. Okay, in Matthew 5:18, for truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, one smallest letter or one stroke will by no means pass away from the law until all things take place. So he's telling you right there it's not going to go away. Revelation 1:16, and in his right hand he held the 7 stars. From his mouth came a sharp, 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun, shining in full strength. And this 2-edged sword is his words that come forth from his mouth. Revelation 2:16. It says, therefore repent, if not, I will come at you with the war against them with the sword of my mouth. So he's talking about his words. He's going to come to war with them with his words. Ezekiel 10:11 says, when they went in any of their four directions without turning as they went. But in whatever direction the front wheel faced, the others followed, without turning as they went. This is because this image is also on the front of every set of the four Gospels that went out. That's why. Proverbs 20:26. A wise sovereign willows out the wrong and turns the wheel over them. So we got to think about what this wheel is. Let's read Ezekiel 1:11 through 15. Their faces and the corner of their prayer garments were stretched overhead. Two of each one joined each man. Two clothed their bodies. They walked each one straight forward, which there the Spirit came to pass, to walk where they went. They did not turn about where they walked. The likeness of the living creatures appeared as kindling embers of fire, the appearance of a torch. The Spirit went to and fro between the living creatures. The fire was bright, and from out of the fire sprang gleaming lightnings. The living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of gleaming lightnings. I saw the living creatures, and look, a united threshing wheel in the land joined the living creatures, each with four faces. This wheel in Hebrew is an ophan. It's a specific type of wheel. It is a threshing wheel. It's the same one used in this Proverbs verse. It separates things. The grain is separated from the husk. The action of the ox trampling and bringing a rough-shod wheel of grain are brought over them. In this way, the vision of Ezekiel, the people are harvested, judged by the fruits of their lives. Once the grain is separated by the threshing wheel, the willing fork is used to separate the grain from the chaff and the weed seeds. So that's why he has a willowing fork in his hand. And I gave you some verses on the threshing floor down there that you can look up other verses too. But I find all this symbology very interesting. Ezekiel 1:16 through 21. The appearance of the threshing wheels and their labors are a fountain of beryl. The four united in one likeness. Their likeness and their labors were coming to pass as a threshing wheel in the center of the threshing wheel. They walked having charge of their four sides, not turning about as they went. The circle was exceedingly high, and the curve was pregnant or full, a fountain encircling the four. Where the living creatures went, the threshing wheels went beside them. When the living creatures were lifted up out of the land, the threshing wheels were lifted up. Wherever the Spirit continued to go, walked their spirit, and their threshing wheels were lifted up along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the threshing wheels. When they walked, and when they stood, they stood. They were lifted up from out of the land, the threshing wheels lifted along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures were in the threshing wheels. This is very interesting, and it's like this is echoed in other parts of the Bible too. Isaiah 28:27 through 28. For black cumin is not threshed with the threshing sledge, nor a cartwheel rolled over cumin, but the black cumin is beaten out with a stick, and the cumin with the rod. Bread flour must be ground, therefore he does not thresh it forever, break it with his cartwheel, or crush it with his horsemen. And then I went ahead and added more to this Proverbs 20:24 through 28. The steps of a man are from Yahuwah. What does a man know about his own way? It is a snare for a man to say rashly, it is set apart, and only later to reconsider his vows. A wise sovereign willows out the wrong and turns the wheel over for them. The spirit of man is the lamp of Yahuwah, searching all the innermost parts, Kindness and truth watch over the sovereign, and he shall support his throne by kindness. Okay? He's talking about, he sets out the threshing wheel and it rolls back over them because they reconsidered their vows. They didn't keep their vows. So this is what the four Gospels are: the word of Yahuwah through the Son of Man given to everybody. But if they accept the lies and stuff of Paul, Peter, and them that were told later and don't accept his words, then it becomes a threshing wheel against them. I hope that makes sense. And if you don't understand about Paul and Peter, you need to watch some other videos because they fulfill so much prophecy that's in the Old Testament, and people don't even realize it because things just got really messed up and changed as soon as the Son of Man was gone. But it was supposed to happen. It's the Father's wrath. And the reason he did such detailed descriptions of this is because he wanted us to see this in the end times. And he knew that we would have the knowledge to be able to see it. He said in Ezekiel 1:8, and the hands of a man extended from under the wings on their four sides, and their faces and the wings were to the four of them. And then in Ezekiel 10:21, each one had four faces and each one had four wings, and beneath their wings was the form of human hands. So beneath their garments, hands were sticking out, and they do stick out on this statue. Okay, here we have two diagrams. The one on the left is St. Peter's, and the one on the right is Ezekiel's temple, as far as what the engineers and stuff think of the size and all is compared to the hand's breadth and all that. I just wanted to show you how close these match. The width on St. Peter's is 490 feet, and the width on Ezekiel's temple they estimate is 490 to 520. And the hand's breadth could change just slightly, and the length is exactly the same as the width. And it's pretty amazing that they match exactly, and then when you look at the blueprint, the altar and all, and everything is in the same place. So I just wanted to show you that. This is another comparison thing. Ezekiel temple plans are on the left, as they think it would be, and then Vatican St. Peter's is on the right. And there is an architect engineer that thinks that the temple in Ezekiel will probably have a domed top and not a flat top like they show in this picture on the left. The temple that he's describing has to be the Vatican. I mean, it matches exactly. The Vatican built Ezekiel's temple already because of the prophecy where the betrayers go. In Exodus, Elohim expressly forbid going upstairs to an altar, yet Ezekiel's temple has stairs. That's Exodus 20:26. Neither shall thou go up by steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness may be not discovered thereon. So why does Ezekiel mention the stairs to the altar? In Ezekiel 43:17, the upper edge also in the square, 14 cubits long and 14 cubits wide, all around the altar is a gutter of 1 cubit with a rim of a half a cubit. The steps of the altar face east. He specifically says that it has steps. And you'll notice that the entire Vatican, the St. Peter's Basilica, faces east. It goes to the east. The artwork in the Vatican matches Ezekiel's descriptions also. This piece you're looking at here is the palace of, I can't ever say this right, Ashurnasirpal II Nimrod Palace relief. It's a part of the Vatican collections. The British have some of them right now, and they have this particular piece at the moment. Ezekiel 41:16 says, "The thresholds and narrow windows in the galleries all around the three of them. Opposite the threshold were paneled with wood all around the floor to the rooms, and the rooms were covered. To the space above the door, even to the inner room of the outside, and on the walls all around, inside and out, was measured patterns. It was carved of cherubim and palm trees, a palm tree between a cherubim and a cherubim. Each cherubim had two faces, a human face toward the palm tree in one face, and the face of a lion toward the palm tree on the other. They were carved in the whole temple all around. From the floor to above the door, cherubim and palm trees were carved. Similarly, on the wall of the nave. I believe the reason all these carved cherubim and palm trees are in the Vatican, and these weird human faces and lion faces and stuff, has to do with this Assyrian art. And they are the most massive collectors of the ancient pagan art of anybody. But it follows real close along with the images you see in the Vatican. And that's because that's what they're actually selling people. You'll even notice, like, in the middle, this is like a tree of life, and then above it is the phoenix bird thing, and it's like, that's kind of like the Holy Spirit symbol they always put at the top of everything, and then the winged men, and even the tetramorph that we talked about. It's like a lot of these pieces, they'll be half human, half lion, or half and half this and half that, like a mix of an animal and a human. And this all goes right along with it. I mean, it's like that is exactly what they are selling the public, and even though it's a cash cow, it's also an occult organization that took the Son of Man and turned him into a pagan deity. So I hope this is all clicking with y'all. I hope you're seeing what I'm trying to talk about. But they are the largest collection of pagan art in the world is at the Vatican. Now, if they were truly from Yahuwah, would they have that there? No. This, I wanted to show you a comparison here. Isaiah 31:8 tells us, "And the Assyrian shall fall by the sword, not of man, and a sword not of man shall devour him," the word of Yahuwah. "And he shall flee from the sword, and his young men shall be put to forced labor. His rock shall pass away in terror, and his officers desert the standard in a panic, declares Yahuwah, whose fire is in Zion, and whose furnace is in Jerusalem." The rock is Peter, is what he's talking about, and Paul. So Paul is the Assyrian, and this is what he was selling, is the tree of life of the Assyrian king, and the winged creatures as the guardian of the fertilizer of the tree. So why did the Vatican have all of these pieces? Well, they have them, and they've turned them into the tree of life and the cross, and taken these images and transposed them and put them into something else to resell the paganism in a different way. That cross that they have on everything, it's like when you read the New Testament, Yahushua actually died on a tree or a stake. The word stavros does not mean cross, and they changed it to be a cross because that's a pagan symbol, and it represents the tree of life. And they have taken all this paganism, and you'll even notice, it's like, if you look at this picture here, it's supposed to be the Father and the Son, you'll see the triangle, the all-seeing eye, thing behind the picture of the Father, and then you've got the two fingers pointing up on his hand. That is the as above, so below. Then you'll notice on the picture of the Christ, he's holding the tree of life symbol thing, and he has the glow on his head, or the enlightenment, which is the Baphomet symbol. And then that is really not a dove that they have put up there. What it is the phoenix rising out of the dust. And you see the occultic symbols down here, the moon and the sun. Well, within that, even if you look even closer, you have an inverted T, and that has to do with the as above, so below also. And the whole rays with all the sun stuff coming out of the sun, that has to do with the sun worship. It's all interconnected, and it's like you always say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It really is. It really, really is. And I believe all the cherubims everywhere has to do with this being fallen angels. And that's just my personal opinion. Now, the other occult symbols are easily proved real fast. I mean, you can go look at any symbology book, that the occultists deal out, and you'll see every one of these symbols that I'm telling you about. I'm sorry I'm not computer savvy enough to use the little pointer thing. I can't figure out how to do it on my PowerPoint, or I would be pointing those things out with the pointer on you. You may have to pause these slides and really look at the stuff as I describe it to see it, but I'm just not that computer savvy. All the things Ezekiel described are at the Vatican. This is Pazuzu, and when you read Ezekiel 41:16, it says the thresholds and the narrow windows and the galleries all around, the three of them opposite the threshold, were paneled with wood all around, from the floor to the windows to the spaces above the door, even to the inner room and on the outside. And the walls all around, inside and out, was a measured pattern, and it was carved cherubim, palm trees, a palm tree between a cherubim. Every cherubim had two faces, a human face toward the palm tree on one side, and the face of a young lion on the palm tree on the other side. And they were carved in the temple all around, from the floor to above the cherubim, and the palm trees were carved similarly in the wall of the nave. Now, I have my suspicions. There's been some videos done on the what do they call it, down below St. Peter's Basilica. There's like these catacomb things, and there's all kinds of pagan art down there. And I have my gut feeling that there's a room that has this exact thing in it, where they have the lion and the palm tree. This is why. Okay, when you look at this symbol right here. What this is right here is a Baphomet. And this piece was part of their collection. Now, why would they be collecting a Baphomet? Doesn't make any sense. If you notice, he's got the horn of enlightenment on the top of the head and two horns wrapping around that. He has the face of a lion on one side, and when you flip this sculpture over, on the other side is the face of a human. He has the as above, so below, one arm up, one arm down. And he has a huge phallic symbol, penis, in the middle. And his feet are hooves. They're actual hooves. Okay. Now, this is interesting because June the 20th on the 1st in 2017, Dr. Habel, Eckhart Fromm's professor of Assyriology, they had a what do you call it, like a seminar thing about this particular deity at the Vatican. It's got the face of the ancient Mesopotamian god Pazuzu was said to be Athenim. And this is in the Vatican museums. That was part of their thing. Pazuzu in Assyrian and Babylonian mythology is depicted as a combination of diverse animal and human parts. He has the body of a man, the head of a lion or dog, and eagle-like talons on his feet. And this one in particular has the hoof-looking feet. I'm going to show you another slide here next that will make this hit home. You will see it even closer. This all started way back in the catacombs. This is a first century or second century cover of catacomb burial engraved in adoration of the Magi in 230 to 256 CE. And this is supposed to be the Messiah here on the right. And this is one of the apostles talking on the left. And you see the all the symbolism, the goats and the horns and all that, and even the feet. Now, look closely at this figure of the Messiah. He's got a goat up on his shoulders, and on his feet is their hooves. They don't even look like, they look like half goat, half human. Now, I'm going to show you something else here real quick. It's a good shepherd, and this it actually came from the catacomb of Priscilla. The two doves represent the spirit, but what the spirit would it be? It's a fallen angel because of the wings. The circle in ancient paganism is a circle of life. And also interesting, the goat on the shoulders, that is the he-goat, or the Baphomet. And like I said, even the image of the Messiah has hoof-looking legs. Like it changes from about above the knee downward. And you'll see a lot of this in their symbolism. And the little trees, the tree of life thing again. It's all interconnected. Then the six-pointed star, and this is something people don't know unless they studied art. This is like the way that the design was laid out was to match this symbol of the six-pointed star. And actually, you have this satanic skull over here that I put in here to show you with the inverted pentagram. Well, actually, that inverted pentagram, if you map it back out all the way, would be a six-pointed star, not an inverted pentagram. And this is called, I'm trying to remember the term, but it is a, in art history, we talked about it, it's a design of the artwork. Behind every major work or masterwork of arts is the design, and it has to do with the golden triangle and all these different things that I didn't understand when I was in art history, all tied to paganism. And you'll notice too that how he's standing on the ground, this is also indicative of the Baphomet, because it's like he's above everything. He's in charge now. And you see there's always some kind of symbolism of light and dark, and that there's a good side and a bad side and a dark side and a light side to everything, and then the as above so below is always there. And in this particular picture, it's done with the six-pointed star. But in a lot of things, it's done actually with the hands, like this Baphomet, and you'll see it a lot in the sculptures and the paintings at the Vatican. They'll have the two fingers pointing up, and somewhere there'll be something pointing down, and it's the same symbol. Where do we find this in Scripture? I wanted to show you it's actually in Scripture, Isaiah 14:9. Sheol, which they translate as the unseen or hell from beneath, is not hell. And if you don't understand about the word Sheol, go look at my video on Sheol. It's about 2 or 3 hours long, but I thoroughly cover this. And it was changed when they put the Neku in on the Hebrew. But it actually, Sheol is also the same identical word used in Saul. And you can go check that in the other chapters in the Old Testament and look at the Hebrew word and compare them. And you will see that I'm correct. Okay, how this reads is like Sheol beneath, or Saul beneath, is stirred up to meet you when you come. And when you look at that, it is actually he in Hebrew, not it. He rouses the shades to greet you. All of the he-goats who were leaders of the earth, it raises from their thrones, all who were kings of the nations. So what he's done is he rousted up the kings of the nation, which is the apostles, and became the leader. And if you don't think he-goats is there, this is why I put the interlineary in here. It is. The he-goats is there. And this is what they are. They are the he-goats. And this is the mountain goats that Psalms talks about. The wicked ones that go up in the hills. And see, your scriptures have hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee. At thy coming it is stirred up the dead of thee. And all the chief ones of the earth it hath raised up from the thrones all the kings of the nations. And this is totally mistranslated, because that word hell is not hell. Hell is a totally different word in Hebrew from what they have. It is either Sheol or Saul is either, it can be either or, a place or a person. And I got suspicious of this with Isaiah 28, and once I went and researched it, Abram Publishing, one of the Jewish publishing houses, also has a lot of information on it, and that it has stumped scholars for a long time. They don't understand, because both words mean to ask of, or they're exactly the same word. So it's either, it's always supposed to be Saul, or it has two different meanings. And I think it's Saul, because when you put it in there correctly, you can understand the 60 warnings that are in the Old Testament about Saul. You don't see it until you do, until you correct it. And then you'll see 60 warnings. Now, I listed several in that video that I did, and I show the ancient and the modern Hebrew and what we have in the scriptures, and showed you the difference in what the words look like. I even show what hell and grave and all that is in Hebrew and compared them. And the words are not the same. It's mistranslated. We also see this in Daniel 8, the he-goat. Chapter 8, verses 21 through 27. And I want to note something here. It's like when you look at what Paul says, it's like 2 Corinthians 12:16. Yet crafty fellow that I am, I caught you with trickery. That's not something you expect to find in the scriptures, but it's there. And then in 1 Corinthians 5:5, you are to deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of flesh, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of Yahuwah. Now, it's like the Son of Man told us, nobody comes to the Father except through me. So do you really think that Satan is going to save anybody? I mean, this is just blatant. Okay, but let's look at Daniel 8. This is the main point, because I think this is speaking about him. The he-goat is the king of the Greeks, and the great horn which was between his eyes, he is the first king. And as for the one that was broken, in whose place there stood up 4 horns, 4 kings shall rise out of this nation, but not of their own strength. And at the latter time of their kingdom, when their sins are come into full, there shall arise a king, bold in countenance, and understanding riddles, and his power shall be great. He shall destroy wonderfully, and prosper in practice, and shall destroy mighty men, and the holy people. And the yoke of his chain will prosper, with craft in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by craft shall destroy many. And he shall stand up for the destruction of many, and shall crush them as eggs in his hand. And the vision of the evenings and the mornings was mentioned as true. And do not seal the vision for many days. I, Daniel, fell asleep and was sick. Then I arose and did the king's business, and I wondered at the vision, and there was none that understood. Well, this is Paul. The yoke of his chain. Peter set up the church, but like Yahushua said, he stretched out his hand. He let Paul dress him and take him where he shouldn't have gone. And Paul actually was running it from behind Peter. He became in charge. And by craft, he destroyed everybody. Everybody following Paul's doctrine is doomed, according to Isaiah and according to all the prophets. Like I said, watch my video on Sheol, and you can watch my video on was Paul a fake apostle, and you'll see it. But this is the he-goat that he was talking about, and it was set up, the beast. It's already happened. We're in the wrath. We're not waiting on the tribulation. The tribulation ended in 73 AD. We're actually in the 3 days of wrath that are mentioned in Hosea, because he said after 2 days he would revive us, and on the 3rd day he will live in our presence. So it's like we're on the 2nd day. He's reviving everybody right now, and by the 3rd day he will be living with us. So just a lot to take in, a very lot to take in. And like I'm telling you, if you haven't watched my other videos, then please do, because you'll never understand all this if you don't. Also, I'm sorry this is very long, but I don't want to break it into 2 or 3 videos, because somebody might happen to watch half of it and not see the whole thing and not understand it and just get upset and mad. So if you don't understand it, if you don't watch it from the very beginning and see it all, you're never going to understand this. It's kind of like the biggest problem I see from both sides, from the Judeans and from the Christians, is the Judeans stay in the Old Testament and they never really study the New Testament. The Christians study the New Testament and they never study the Old Testament. If you do not put the 2 books together, you will never see the truth. You have to study both. It is 1 book, not 2 books. And they'll say, well, how can you throw out all of Paul's stuff? I don't think it should have been thrown out. It's supposed to be there. This is a test by Father. He knows that if you love him and you seek him and you understand the words of the Son that came, then you will see that Paul was not from him, because his words are totally contradictory and they destroy everything else within the scriptures. And he left it in there so we would know the truth. The vision of the evenings and the mornings I cover in my video on Daniel, if y'all want to watch that also, just to let you know. And this is not, I want to tell y'all, I don't know it all. What I'm showing y'all is what I feel like Father has showed me. I by no means know everything there is to know about all this. And when you thank somebody Thank you, Hua, because he's the one that got this information out here, not me. They don't hide any of this either. It's like, it's just people's understanding of good and evil is not there. They just don't know it. And this is why I think everything that has happened to me in my entire life was leading me up to this end time to be able to show y'all this. Because the knowledge level I have with art history, I fell away and was Wiccan for several years. And because I was disgusted with what I was seeing within the churches, and they didn't seem real to me, and I walked away from it, and for good reason. I mean, now I see it. It's like, I didn't like the attitude of the people. I didn't like the way they thought that they could just go on being evil and still be forgiven. They were hypocritical. And I remember as a little kid, I've been looking for Yahuwah my entire life. Since I was teeny tiny. I used to think when I was real little I wanted to be a nun. Because nuns were close to God and they got to focus on Him, you know. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on Him. I wanted to be close to Him. And then I got into going to the churches, and my grandfather was big on that. My parents didn't go. I went to church when I was too little to cross the street by myself. I begged my mama to get me there, and she did. She would walk me across the street and take me to the door and leave me there. I would go to the service, and then she would come back and get me. But they didn't go. And it's like, I didn't understand that. It's like, if God is in that house, why aren't you going? You know? And how can you still work and try to make money on His day and all this? I didn't understand any of the Bible at that time. I just had a strong urge to be close to Him. And then as I got older, I kept looking for the right place to go. The right place to go. I went to all the different churches, and in college, I happened to go to a Catholic church, and I liked the calm in there. It was quiet. There wasn't anybody up in the pulpit screaming and yelling at everybody, and people weren't doing the Holy Spirit, speaking tongues, fall on the floor stuff. And so I joined, and I went for several years, and it's like, I got really disgusted. When I got sick and couldn't work anymore, I didn't have as good clothes as I had to begin with, and I couldn't get my hair cut and stuff at salons and get fixed and look like I used to look when I nursed, because I just didn't have the money to do all that. And I literally had women turn their back to me on the steps because I wasn't good enough for them to talk to them. So I walked away from all of it at that point. That was like the final straw. It's like, okay, these people don't even know the Father at all. And I just walked away from all of it. And then I got caught up in studying all the different religions and trying to figure out if this was even for real. Because at that point I was really upset. And I ended up getting involved in the American Indian spirituality stuff because I'm part Native. And when I did, and then that led into the nature religions of Wicca. And then I was upset with them because they kept bashing the Christians. And I was like, why are they bashing the Christians? If they all believe the same thing and what they're saying, then why are they so angry about it, you know? And I set out to prove to them that Yahuwah was just another deity like all the rest of them. And that's when I found the truth. It's like He set me straight real fast. And I repented and come back. But I didn't come back to churches. I did for a couple of months, and I saw the same thing all over again. And I'm like, no, He's not in these buildings. I decided He was in the Word, and that's where He is. That's where you'll find Him. That's why He says, set yourself apart. And don't be of this world, because This world is evil and corrupt, and especially right now, it's so bad right now. You will find him between the pages of his word. And when you do, you'll know all the truth. And then you will know that you have to follow his laws, his rules, and do what he asks of us. And once you do that, your life becomes so much better, because you don't have all the problems and hang-ups and things going wrong that come from not following his word. That's why all the problems are in the world today, is it all has to do with nobody is following his rules. But I know that's a lot to say, and this is a long video anyway, but I wanted to show you, it's like, they don't hide this. They never have hid it. People just don't know what they're looking at. It's like the Baphomet is everywhere in the Catholic Church. And it's gotten so bad, you look at that picture of that crucifix on the priest there on the left, they've even put the hooves on them. And this altar in Germany, and that came out last year, photos of that. They had the horned God with his wing things right out front. It's like they're not hiding anything. They never have. Look at the old crucifixes and you'll see of the phallic symbol sitting right in the abdomen. And people look at this stuff and they don't see it until it's pointed out. The caldus that he's holding in his hand is a symbol of that, of the two snakes intertwined. That is the symbol for phallicism, and the popes carry that proudly in their hand when they do go marching around. It's all there. It always has been. And I think everything I went through in my life, Father knew where I would be at this point in my life, and he knew that with the knowledge I had studied that I would see it. And that's why, because for a while I thought, man, why is he showing me this stuff? It's like, who am I? I'm nobody. And I really am. I mean, I have walked in bad stuff. I've done bad things as far as, I mean, I was never an evil person, and my intent was not evil. My intent was to find him. And I guess he knows your intent. It's like I didn't cast spells on people and all that. I got caught up in worshiping his creation instead of the creator, because I loved it. It was like nature and beauty, and oh, it was just fantastic. And I thought that was him. I had messed up. But you can't worship the creation instead of the creator. There's only one creator, and that's Yahuwah. And he sent his son to teach us. But he also sent his son to carry out his wrath, because of his anger is so huge right now. I mean, it is really huge. And how did I come about seeing the whole thing? It's like when I came back, I set out to really study the scriptures from front to back. And I studied, Genesis, all that stuff. And then I got to the New Testament, and I started with the 4 Gospels, because I figured that was the words of his son. I'll start with those. And everything I was reading mirrored Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Exodus, all that stuff. And I was like, wow, it's like he's teaching the law in the Old Testament. And then after I finished that, I ended up cross-referencing all the words of Christ in red to the Old Testament. When I finished doing that, I started on the other books in the New Testament. And when I got to Paul, I think it was like on the 3rd or 4th book, and I just felt like slinging the book. I was like, this can't be from him. This matches nothing else in the whole scriptures, because I had never really sat down and analyzed all of Paul. And I was doing in-depth Bible study, not just surface stuff. And I went to sleep that night. I was really upset. I went to sleep that night, and I never dream. I never have dreams. It's like, but I had prayed right before I went to bed about, Father, I don't understand. You're going to have to help me understand. And I woke up dreaming. I was reading in Isaiah, and I was reading a specific chapter. And I thought, wow, that's weird. I never dream. If I do, I don't remember them. So I came out here and I started reading, and lo and behold, he was showing me. And this went on for a long time, different chapters. And I was having a hard time remembering which chapter I was reading when I was dreaming, so I put a notebook and started writing them down so I wouldn't forget. And he showed me this. I mean, Father showed me this. I would never have seen it. I mean, I was just getting disgusted again. I was like, something's bad wrong. When you read Paul, it doesn't fit anything else in the scriptures. And then it felt like I didn't like Acts either, because it felt like it was, I don't know, it didn't match the old scriptures either. But I came to find out that Luke and Acts are two of the most important chapters in the New Testament, because I believe it was the Son of Man, the light giver, the physician, the great physician. I think that he was showing us, because Acts exposes them. It's a history, yeah. It tells you what happened. It tells you the truth. It's telling you that, oh, they didn't do what he told them to do. They immediately started going off and doing the wrong things. And it exposes very, very much. But I hope this isn't too long-winded, but I just wanted to share that because I'm not responsible for seeing this stuff. People keep thanking me that find my videos, and I feel peculiar because it's like I felt like Father wanted me to show y'all. And I even hate doing videos, to be honest. I'm not a public speaker, and I get very intimidated when I have to speak. That's why it takes me so long to get a video out. I re-record the slides over and over because I'm so nervous. But it was him that showed me. And I'm passing it along to you in case you're in that same place searching for the answer. And he will bring you to my video and you'll find it. That's why I do it. I felt like Father wanted me to do it. Okay, where did the image come from? It comes directly from Paul, and it's in your scriptures. This is going to freak people out. It freaked me out. Okay, he said in Exodus 24, you do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness that which is in heaven above or is on the earth beneath or which is in the waters or under the earth. Okay, in Romans 8:29, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. Okay, when you go look at that word image, ekron, it's an idol. It's a material image, a likeness, or an effigy. So what he's talking about is an actual idol. And people don't know that. Paul was teaching an idol worship. And if people really knew that, and I do not understand why these ministers and pastors that have studied Greek do not understand this or see it, and how it can be in Strong's, and 2,000 years of believers reading and studying didn't see this. The only thing I can say is Father blinded us and closed our ears, and that's why nobody saw it. And it's the same word that was used in Luke 20:24. Show me a penny. Whose image and subscription hast thou? They answered and said, Caesar's. So it is definitely a word for an image or idol. Revelation 13:14. And deceived them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. He's describing the crucifix, and it's the same word, image. Acts 17:23. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with an inscription, To the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. This is Luke, the light giver, telling you what Paul was doing. I hope this is coming home now. I hope y'all are seeing it, because it's real. And we got 4 billion believers that are Christians that are going to perish, and we have a bunch of Judeans that don't even know the Son of Man was real. So we got it on both sides. That's why the remnant of the trees will be so few a child can write them down. That's what Isaiah tells us. The Son of Man said, the gate is narrow. No, the path is narrow, and few find it. He said, many will be called, but few will be chosen. That's why. So if you're seeing this and you're understanding, praise Yahuwah, who is the only true Elohim. The Son of Man was his servant. I wanted to show y'all a little bit more here so you can see that it's throughout. I mean, it's on everything. And this is a statue from inside the Vatican here, and you can see the hoof feet. That's Pan, the horn god from the Greeks. And it doesn't matter what country the adversary is represented in all countries. And I believe this is because, certain people will be chosen to be a part of Father's family and some won't. But the majority of the world is going to go the way of the adversary. But I just wanted to show y'all that these as above, so below stuff is in everything, and the horned God is in everything. Like always, I'm going to give you the same advice at the end. Go back to the forgotten way, get into His Word, and learn what it is. Jeremiah 6:16. Thus says Yahuwah, Stand ye at the ways and see, and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, We will not walk therein. Well, we have to walk therein, or we're not going to make it. Well, I hope that you've gotten something out of this. This was a very difficult one to do because it's just a lot of information to try to show somebody else what you're seeing and when you're reading. But if you have anything to add that you've seen when you're reading Ezekiel, please do at the bottom, and I'll add it to my notes. And may Elohim bless you and keep you. May Elohim make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Elohim lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Shalom, everybody.